Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being with me here at the live version of this masterclass on how to gamify mobile health applications. And the level of this masterclass is core, which means that I do not expect you to have prior experience in gamifying digital health or mobile health, and I do expect you guys to have a preliminary understanding what digital health and mobile health mean, but I don't really expect you guys to have had a significant amount of experience in actually applying gamification into the digital health spectrum, which is by its own merit. Both of them are in the infant stage, so nobody out there is an expert. We're just people who happen to do it for a longer time. Okay, so my name is Kat Usap. I am a biomedical engineer with a master's in health informatics, and my focus rather is gamification in precision health. I hope that makes sense to you guys. All right, so you can contact me directly, okay, via my website, katusap.com, or you can tweet me at itsKatUsap. I do create occasional content, and I love sending it back to my past attendees. So if you hear from me, there's a high chance I'm giving you something attached, or maybe a URL or something, okay, some giveaway, intellectual good, okay? I don't like to send regular newsletters, okay, because I do have other things that I'm doing, but then I always want to give back to the people who actually been there all along and wanted to learn from me. It's a huge honor. It's a huge honor to have you here to actually, listen to me for some, for an hour and a half. So let's see, what are my experiences? As you can see from the website, hopefully that you got in there by now, I have some significant track record in gamification in terms of consumer health, in terms of mental health, and also in simulating surgery. So those things, the output was interesting. Some of them were pure research, so they became publication. For example, the one for diabetes and the one for hearing loss, and the others actually got sold out, so exited. Okay, so that's basically on a nutshell what I do. I do toggle from research, which is the academia, and industry. So 2 years here, 2 years there, and the very reason why I'm doing that is because I'm a research and development biomedical engineer by background. So I really need to make sure that my research is intact and also my development is intact. So I do play this game, which is for a lot of people, what are you doing? But I am being an R&D, and given the fact that I want to be the R&D between these two realms, I really need to make sure that I get those both taken care of. All right, so let's get in. You guys ready? All right, so innovation architecture here in terms of mobile health is what I do mostly. And then, as I told you in the sides, I do have the biomedical engineering background and researcher, and then a hustler because I do own a co-working space, which is an incubator. And that gives me a lot of access to startups, and I have a high friction with startuping. All right. So past work, you can look for them. You got Tribe Care, it's all gamification here. As you can see, most of my output are gamification, and have been had awards and also had talks, for example, in Harvard Medical School. And right now, I'm actually building another platform that is gamified, but specifically for generalized anxiety disorder. Okay, so mental health. And that is, I'm writing, you just found me guys just left the writing of patent. So yeah, so my brain is a bit fried, but hey, I've been working on the gamification part, so my brain is quite fresh on this topic. All right, so let's go. So I like this quote. I like to open up the outline with this quote by Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill said, the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. And this is very, very important, even though you might say, oh, it's out of scope. But then if you truly think about it, the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. The key word here is learn faster. So when we talk about learning, everybody will tell you perhaps memorization is learning, schooling is learning, but then we all agree that when we have a game, and if I'm learning something from that game, I will retain that information way, way more because I was having fun doing it. So I really love this quote because it really captures the value of gamification. All right. So for us to understand the value of gamification, we really need to first understand the outlines of what is gamification first, and then games versus gamification, because there's a lot of like, what do you call that? A lot of noise in the industry where people mismatch between gamification and games, and then how to run a gamified mobile health project. And this is a pragmatic step-by-step process that you can take note of. After you have the slide deck, it's going to be easy for you to look at it and then, work your project around it. And this is a very valuable slide deck in that sense. All right, so now that we understood the value of gamification is to be able to make somebody to learn faster, because that's the only way we can win. And if you think about it in a philosophical manner, winning means that you attained that specific goal, or the specific not only goal, but specific vision for yourself. So now I want you to really think about it from a patient perspective. So if somebody is having a long-term chronic disease, let's just talk about, for example, the most famous disease out there is diabetes, that actually has technology in it. So for somebody with diabetes, knowing that you need to manage your chronic disease, you cannot actually cure it, but you can only manage it to a certain extent. So your brain is like, me winning is me having a managing this chronic disease with the whole lifestyle that I have, making sure that I am not having low insulin and all that stuff, making sure that I'm not running out of insulin if I'm traveling. You see, so the perspective that you really need to take as a developer, innovator in the sphere, trying to bring in gamification, which we're gonna define in a while, is that think about it from their perspective, patient-centered, always be patient-centered. So think about it from that perspective. Okay, you say, all right, this is the way they see winning. Them winning is that they are going into a lake trip and they make sure that everything is fine. They're not going to faint or some other adverse effects. All right. So I hope that gave you an idea of how can you actually capture the value and how actually can you communicate the value of gamification. Now let's look at this definition. What is gamification? This is a hot topic. It's a very buzzy word, and you will see it in a lot of cutting edge technologies. We are gamifying this, we're gamifying that, but what do we mean exactly? All right, so gamification really aspires to capture the behavioral change, and then there is this aspect that you want to influence it, okay? You want to influence it for the better, okay? For the better, that is the perspective of the patient, okay? Especially speaking on digital health spectrum here. So you are trying to influence the behavior of your patient for the better. So, for example, if somebody has to take their medication on time because it's really critical, really critical, that person takes the medication on time, it will be very useful, very valuable if you can gamify the process to the point that the patient has a high medication adherence. You see? So you're playing around, designing ways, capturing elements, being creative in order to make sure that the goal is the user takes their medication on time, because it's really vital. If they don't, they may end up, for example, if they have cardiovascular disease, atrial fibrillation. I hope that you guys are aware of that situation, is that if you don't take your medication on time, like warfarin, you might end up having clots in your blood, and God knows what happens when you have clots in your blood, especially if they're in the vessels or in the heart or in the brain, right? A higher chance of stroke. So you are trying to influence the person without coercing them, without commanding them, without dictating to them a certain behavioral change for a positive output that you know is good for them. All right? I hope that makes sense to you, especially as an innovator in the digital health. The other one is obviously, which is connected to behavioral change, is compliance. You want them to comply to the prescription. You want them to comply to the treatment, to the regime, to the, for example, schedule of show up to the doctor visit. So because the problem is when patients feel, most of the time it's about feel that the hospital system or the provider or the nurse or anybody who is a caretaker is not really truly into their problem, okay? So the empathy part, because you can't be empathic with 1,000 people. It's just impossible, right? So there's a moment where you have to be a professional. So you prescribe and leave. That's basically what's happening most of the time. So when they feel that like, I don't think they care enough about me, there's a lot of times that there's a no-show. So the no-show doctor visit, which is the biggest nightmare of any hospital, of any provider, they'll tell you, especially when it's behavioral health problems, mental health problems, psychiatric services, the lack of compliance, that you never know if they are actually taking their drugs on time. You never know if they're overdosing, underdosing, and that will hamper the health delivery, health delivery pipeline or workflow, because you don't know. They're no-show. They're ghosting you, basically, right? So that's why gamification is a creative solution to that, all right? So always remember engagement. You're trying to engage them. You want them to be an active and an empowered patient, not a passive one, taking care of themselves, right? You want them to get healthier. You want them to manage their lives, and you want them to manage their chronic diseases. And then, of course, there's the element of fun, because what's the point of having gamification if it's not fun? What's the point of, doing all this, going extra mile to create a new workflow of how to capture all this information, and you're not having fun, you're stressed. So what's the point of that? Always remember, you have to put an element of fun, because they're going to learn your system, and thus by learning your system, you are helping them in changing their behavior. Therefore, they can have high compliance and high engagement with their regimen, with their treatment, and with the overall wellness. All right. So there's a word game in there because of the word fun. All right. So what are the aspects? What are the elements out there that actually compasses the definition of gamification? Of course, the good one is game elements. So in the game elements, you can Google that one. This is next level, okay? This is the core. We're not going to dwell on every aspect, but then if you want to go further, then I'm giving you the pillars for research, for further research. So game elements, quests, challenges, levels, leaderboards, competition, and collaboration. These are game elements that you can incorporate in the design of your process. User types. You have to figure out what type of gamer you got. Socializer, which is also a networker. Free spirit, which is also the exploiter. Achiever, which is also the consumer. And philanthropist, which is the self-seeker. All right, and then motivation. Relatedness. So you got status, connections. You got autonomy, choice, creativity, mastery, achievement, and feedback, purpose, altruism, and meaning. You have to figure out what's the motivation of the bigger populace or bigger subpopulation, the majority of the people, the users of your platform. What is their cornerstone? What is their root motivation? You have to figure that out. And you can only be able to figure that out by having a direct access to them. And you need to, here we go, another aspect that you need to learn, another skill set is design thinking, where you will be able to have this frequent iterative focus groups to capture the motivation. The other element that you have to look at is rewards, points. How are you going to reward the person, right? If they adhere, then if they have a behavioral change, if they complied, if they engage, how are you going to reward them? Because this is gamification, right? There's aspects of it. There's an aspect of gaming here. So what's the reward? Are you going to give me points? Are you going to give me badges? Are you going to give me trophies, achievements, gifts, money? Are you going to pay me? Are you going to give me coupon codes, maybe? Coupon codes for some wellness center or something? So the sky is the limit, you guys. You can do anything you want, but remember, you need to know the balance between challenge, which is where the game elements would come in, challenge versus reward. These two things have to really be interconnected. And then this will be supported, the design of this game element and reward situation will be supported by user types and motivation. The more you know about the inner motivations, the more precise that you can actually design your pipeline. And the user type, the more you know what type of person you're dealing with, majority, and what type of inner motivation they have, then you'll be able to pick and choose the more relevant and precise game elements and rewards. All right, so this is something I want you guys to, if you're interested in this domain, then go ahead and research about each part of them to fully understand how these 4 elements actually work together. So if you look at the left diagram, you see that, for example, there is the one that is a purple. You see there's achievement, quest, chatter, activities, friends, and performance. And then you can have, when you click on activities, you can figure out what other people are doing. This person earned 324 points, etc. Right? So all of these aspects here are, give me a moment. Thank you. All right, so when you look at the left one, the icon there, you see that they have a point system. So it's not a badges, it's not trophies, it's not necessarily achievements, but then you see in the activities area, it's more of the points, because that is catering to a user type that is more of the achiever, not the achiever, I'm sorry, the self-seeker. Because the self-seeker are really into having point systems. All right, they like to collect and they like to see how far they're going through the track. So when you have an achiever, if you see that icon over there, there are 6 awarded. So because they are more of the consume, like their reward mechanism, it's more of achievements and trophies, not necessarily gifts, money, points, or badges, but rather achievements. So if I have a trophy, therefore I feel like I have succeeded. So if you look at the upper diagram, it's for LinkedIn. LinkedIn had a very interesting user experience, digital experience transformation. So from the earlier platform, you've noticed that it was purely plain. It was almost like a CV dumping place where you put your CV and that's it. There was no social aspect. You're not necessarily entering any digital experience rather than connecting to people you don't know, and they will look at your page as if it's a CV or it's a resume. But now it's different because they have entered the networker situation, which is the LinkedIn groups. There's also the badges because of completion of your profile. So you get badges of premium, all-star, and everything like that. All right. Next. So there's different types of users that you have to look into, and this will help you in segmenting your majority of users. And the only way for you to figure out the majority of users is that you have to set up focus groups, literally a sample of the people that may consume your product. So there are 4 types. There's the enjoyer, farmer, networker, and self-seeker. When you're dealing with an enjoyer, look at the inner Sriya, I will answer your question after the slide, okay? All right, so look at this very, very careful. This is gonna be like really the fundamental. Like you will always go back to this slide, okay? So when you are dealing with an enjoyer, if your majority of your users are enjoyers, then you have to understand their inner motivation. What do they need? Okay, there's this need, which is surprise, inspiration, and fun. Okay, and the game mechanics that you can implement in order to supply for that need is luck and quick success games, prizes, and boosters. So an example of that is a fortune wheel. Example is the lotto, bingo, stuff like that. So there must be some random, like a random notification of, oh, you won 50 points, you won $50, something like this, because they really believe that they need that element of surprise and also element of luck. Even the word is not there, but I'm going to add it here. There's an element of luck. They feel lucky. I'm feeling lucky. Let me feel lucky. Okay, so if you're dealing with the majority of your users, after you identify them, that they are enjoyers, then look at these game mechanics and expand further. Remember the game elements we talked about? and the game mechanics, and you'll figure out which ones work best. And of course, we have to iterate by testing with other people. So if you have a farmer, you guys, what they need is achievement and collection. All right, so there's this thing, collection. They have to collect. And the game element, when we say collections, could be collection of points, collection of not badges, but collection of something they see as valuable. Okay, just let me put it generically as possible. Something that they see as valuable. So it could also mean like collecting cars. Some people are like that. Some people collect stuff, and sometimes they hoard stuff, and that is where the farmer is neurotic or anxious, right? So what they need is achievements and collection. Focus on collection rather, because the achievement is overlapping with self-seeker. So we have to make a little bit of distinction. So focus on collection, and the game mechanics here are badges, levels, simple task, progress bars, and they love to have accountability. So make sure that everything is tracked and everything is transparent to them. So for example, a very beautiful example for this is Google Fit, when they are counting your steps. It's simple, it has levels, it gives me a clear understanding of how many steps I took for a day. So, and that is a collection, it's a collection, and it is the farmer's heaven, because I can tell exactly how many hours or how many minutes, how many steps, how many things I have consumed, etc., etc. So the gamification example here will be reviews badges. You see, so there's some badges. You earn this premium, you earn this, for example, bronze, premium, and gold, and it gives them that idea that it's a very distinct idea that you have to have a bronze if you achieve 5,000 steps in 30 days, for example. You know what I mean? But just a random example, all right? So the third one is self-seeker. And when we're dealing with self-seeker, is that their need, so it's their inner motivation is status, influence, and acceptance. So this is, I'm not going to, say another word about it. I was almost going to tell you it's ego-driven, but then that's a psychological word. Let's just say that it's very outwardly oriented. So they really want to feel that they are validated for their effort. So the reward should be outwardly. For the farmers, for example, the reward is inwardly, because they are keeping tabs of everything, and they like to see figures in a precise manner, while the self-seeker is also, despite being achiever-oriented, but it's more about status, influence, and acceptance in comparison to other people. So these people are highly competitive people, and this is how they earn their reward, they earn their self-respect and other stuff, is by realizing that they are better than other people in a certain expertise or certain field of sports, etc., etc. So the game mechanics that you can cater to these type of people is leaderboards, duels, extra options, scoreboards. It's amazing if you can actually put the username earned versus this. He is number 1 in the week, he is number 5 on the week. They love that, because there's always this keeping tabs with other people, rather. So the farmer is keeping tabs with themselves, self-seeker are keeping tabs with other people. They need to make sure that they're competing, and they are at a better status than other people, because it's really people-oriented. So gamification example that you can implement here if you're dealing with a specific digital health platform is users rating. So this is where the person can be validated. They can be given a certain status that they are, they are better than other people because of the badges they have acquired, because of the leaderboard. So the scoring that they had for the week, maybe for the amount of hours they spent in the gym. It depends on that, but whatever it is, it's an accountability with it's a social accountability. I hope that is make you clear. The fourth one is a networker, and the networker are a little different breed, but they are actually the majority among all of these people. And what they need is context, communication, and privileges. So there's a lot of social circle, and they would like to be part of community. So it's very communal aspects, and you will see them mostly, for example, being as influencers, mentors, mediators, so mediums of different people, social workers, social angels, and like you find them out there advocating for things, social advocates. So these are the people who have inherently their gaming principle is networker. So the game mechanics here are chats, mentoring, and communities. So an example of this is basically Facebook groups, Meetup, like live seminars, physical seminars, public library seminars, something like this, where people gather together, and you find a networker having a sort of acknowledgement of their award, of their reward, by actually either facilitating it, leading it, being active participant or a supporter of this cause or social advocation. Or always remember, it's very social oriented, not because of competitiveness or because you want to be better than other people like self-seeker, but rather you want to be a mediator, a facilitator, a connector. Okay, so the gamification example, if the people that you're dealing with most in your as a result of your interviews is that they are networkers, then you have to understand that it's going to be very text oriented, very voice oriented, very people oriented in terms of social circles. So for example, here, advice section. An advice section, you find people advising each other, telling each other experiences and all. You can find, for example, a lot of forums where diabetics actually mentor each other because that person had it for 20 years, that person had it for 10 years. So they share each other some tips and tricks. And that if that is your target market, then you really have to adhere to the way they do it. All right, before I move on, there's a question. So do you think this one is related to our fitness apps in our smart watches? When you mean this one, you have to tell me what's this one, okay? For fitness apps, as you can see, this is why it's a saturated market, because there's a lot of fitness apps. I think you are aware of that. But then even though it's a saturated market, not everybody actually tempered or dominated it per se. It's because everybody's dodging bullets here. And this is one way for you to actually quickly get into straight to the matter and figure out who you're dealing with, figure out your user group, and then design to that user group according to their need. And this way, you're not wasting much time. You're not going all over and then coming back like, oh, my people are rather self-seekers. I didn't know they were self-seekers. Oh, my people were farmers. I didn't know they were farmers. And this is very, very important for you to figure out early on. So this is cutting through the chase, rather. All right. So there is an important aspect which is called the master mountain, and it's very important, especially if you are going to implement gamification process flow in any digital health platform. You have to understand this aspect because it's going to merge like a recipe. It's going to merge with the gamification elements that we talked about earlier. All right, so you got in the bottom of the pyramid, you got novice and then problem solver, expert, master, and visionary. And I will explain each one what happens to it. So when you have a novice, he knows nothing about the system. And these are the people who are going to, because they don't know, you need to actually be on offense because you have to make them aware of your gamified platform, right? But then once they know it, this is the cutting edge here. It's either they're going to leave the system altogether, unimpressed, they don't care, or they're going to elevate to the next side, which the next upper echelon, and that is the problem solver. So here they're still new, but they know where to go to get an answer. So why do they know where to go? Is because you design the process flow according to their inner gamer. All right, so the answer here could be them achieving or doing a challenge. The answer could be them looking for information, so knowledge base. It depends what the answer mean here, but then it depends again what you're offering as a service. So after having a problem solver, this is where actually the scaling will happen, because now you're sustainable, but then the scaling will happen more once you go higher. So if you're going to scale your system, you are aspiring that your user base will elevate into the expert level. And when your users are expert, it means that they have a defined understanding of the knowledge that is the workaround within your platform and can answer questions about it even if you don't answer it. So they could become your own support system. So they will be answering each other like, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. So for scaling to happen for any platform, you really need to guide your users from novice to expert. They really reach a point that they can understand your platform without you even doing any tutorials. And that's where the power of the UX UI will come in. That's where the power of actually clarifying and cleansing the process flow into three features rather. Very simple. So after having the expert, well, this is the beginning of scaling, but if you really want to dominate the market share, that's what you want, then you have to guide your users into mastery. And to have a master user, it means that they have this system as part of their identity. And this is an interesting thing. I'll give an example. For example, the Instagram influencers, those are the master users because they are the Instagrammer became part of their identity. They're Instagram models. So how did somebody who just uses the Instagram to find an answer or find a tag or just post their pictures start to reach a point that they tell you I'm an Instagram model? It's because Instagram designed it in a simplistic way and also in an addictive way for the user to elevate all the way to master, where an Instagram model, an Instagrammer, Instagram influencer became part of the identity that they actually say outside the platform altogether. And that is also free marketing because it becomes word of mouth and also authority, which means that you dominated the market share. All right, so after that, there is the higher aspiration here, and this is where you have a visionary. So for the visionary user, once you identify that you have reached some of the users will reach it, is that they take on the personality of the creative assistant in their own head. So they themselves who are going to support system and telling you we have to add some features because we need more of awesomeness in your platform. And that doesn't happen much. But when it happens, it means that you have totally dominated the market share of your specific digital platform. All right, any questions? Any questions? So remember, even when you are recruiting people to your user base, remember that they have a journey, and that journey will tell if you will have a higher traction. And to have a higher traction is that you have to understand what happens in the user world. And that is why gamification, the elements, and knowing their needs exactly and creating elements for that will help you get a lot of people into the master level. Because the visionary is already like a validation that your platform is here to stay. You see what I mean? But then you want a lot of people to be from problem solve all the way to master. You want them to be there. You don't want them to be novice and then reach a little bit problem solve and then opt out. Because that's what it means that, oh, we are going downhill, right? Okay. So what do we mean by a reward? Okay, so let's take a 2-minute coffee break, water break, and let's be back, okay? So we will answer this question. All right. Did you guys drink water like me? One moment. welcome whoever came, like, come on, no problem. You're gonna have your recorded version. You'll be able to, backtrack and watch. All right, so what do we mean by reward? Because now we understood, I think we have a fundamental understanding of what type of gamification users we're talking about, and we have to identify, right? What are the elements that actually make gamification possible? And then we talked briefly that gamification is because there is an aspect of reward. It's not going to be a gamified process if I don't have a reward out of it. Because if there's no reward out of it, then it's just a chore. It's a task. It's a challenge with no response, rather. And this is why a lot of people enter this process of like entering a task and they're like, this is so boring, because there's no element of reward. You don't foresee or perceive or experience an aspect where you say, oh, because I put this effort, something came back to me, right? So we are in a world right now. We are in a cusp of everything going digitalized. When I say everything, a lot of things are already digitalized by now, but the situation of everything means that even our behavioral health is gonna get even digitalized. We are becoming cyborgs. I hope you guys understand that. When we become cyborgs, means a lot of things are being meshed with the digital transformation. So here we are experiencing, for example, with the younger generation, Generation Z, instant gratification craze, right? So how are you going to compete in a highly saturated, fast-paced marketplace where apps die, like it's a death ground out there? How are you going to capture even one user and retain them? And you have to understand that from an innovator point of view. This is impossible. I cannot just make an app that you just sign in and then I demand that you put your drug intake every day because I tell you so. It does not work anymore. Who cares? You see what I mean? No, I can have 10 other apps that are doing exactly what you're doing. Why are you standing out? You're not standing out. And why should I keep you? You're just, taking my bandwidth away. You see? So the aspect of reward should be totally engrossed into the pipeline that the design flow that you're making for digital health. Because now more than ever, because of the instant gratification craze and because of the way lifestyle that is so mobile and so hyper connected in the cloud has become, it is very hard for a digital health app to survive. All right, so let's talk about the reward. All right, so 7 ways games reward the brain. We have to talk about games and not necessarily gamified processes. Why I want to tell you about games, because games is a long, it's an evergreen, well-validated process all along. Gamified digital health, on the other hand, is very infant. Believe it or not, it's an infant world. Everybody's dodging bullets. Everybody's trying. And once we have some big winners, then we can say, okay, this is how 7 ways gamified digital health reward the brain. Okay, so now we have to look at games, because games has always been there and we have a pretty much understanding, a solid understanding of how it works with us. Okay, so the element of uncertainty, this is interesting. It's also a reward, because you're craving, because we have a caveman and cavewoman inside of us no matter what. That caveman and cavewoman really craves uncertain challenges. Somewhere I'm gonna prove how strong, how smart, how fill in the blank I am. Remember that. So the element of certainty is an invitation by the platform, challenging the user to portray their survival skills. You see? So that is one aspect. The other one is long and short-term aims. This is also, again, comes from the primitive side of us, where we want to know where we're going. So we want to know how good we are, right? So the short-term aims, like, this is my goal for the next week. This is the goal for the next 3 months. This is the goal for the next year. This is why a lot of apps get downloaded during New Year's resolution, because I'm gonna have fitness app, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to be better with my medications, I'm gonna get better with this, blah 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 blah, right? So this is an aspect that just setting the reward, like setting the goal itself, is already giving the brain a high, because like, oh, that's our target, oh, that's that gazelle, we're gonna hunt it, we're gonna hunt that gazelle. You see what I mean? So when long short-term aims are actually hunting that goal, because it gives us a high, it gives a purpose, it gives us something to work towards to. So remember that. So when you are designing your platform in digital health, you have to look at that. The other one is enhance engagement. So the reward, again, because of the game, is that you enhance the engagement because you are challenged, there's uncertainty, there is this aspiration to win, there's aspiration to prove oneself. So that brings engagement. Think about it. Most people get bored, but then when you invite them into a challenge, into a duel, maybe into a some aspect of unknown, uncharted territory, then you are engaging the brain. That person is fully with you, right? So the other one is reward the effort. So you're rewarding the effort because the more pain the person is experiencing, the more they perceive the value of the reward. So it's like no pain, no gain situation. This is exactly what it is. So the harder the challenge, reasonably harder, please, because there's too many aspects, but reasonably hard challenges in levels, the better the reward they will feel about it. And that brings them a certain type of euphoric validation that they have some serious survival skill. And that validates their strength and fill in the blank, whatever that is you're targeting, based again on the gamification user inner need, which is in the previous slides. So the other aspect is social. The other aspect was social because you see other people also having some similarly the same challenge, and then you can see that they are not doing well, they're doing better. You get inspired to do better. You get inspired to actually, not fail, because you saw how it's like failing. You might be stuck in one challenge for so long and then you don't like that. It gives you a cringy feeling. You're like, no, I have to get better. You see what I mean? So that is the social dynamic where you want to compare yourself to others, because hopefully in a positive sense, and that's where you have to design your platform in a positive sense, where it's not really making fun of somebody who's slower in hopping into the regimen, for example, or the treatment plan. So what you do here, the social dynamic, is that you give them a sense of belonging. We're all in this together. You see, we've got this. We're all in this together. This challenge, we can handle it. Let's push each other to the better. Let's walk more. Let's go for a marathon together. Somebody is not doing well. Let's help him out. You see? So there is this very interesting, actually, if you think about it, it's a very inspiring community that come out because of the element of uncertainty, because of the long and short-term goals, which means that they're aligned, and because they are engaged, so they are not like passively going through it, because there's something at stake here. Maybe they have to pay $5 if they lost, you know what I mean? And then there's a reward effort, which is by its own primitive sense, it gives the sense of purpose, sense of life, sense of that we got this, the warrior in us is satisfied, and this is something that it's still there, and you have to cater to it at the end of the day. And the other ones are, for example, the experience bars and measuring progress. It helps in all aspects. It helps in the long and short-term aims, because you go like, I'm 75% almost there. You see, I'm almost there. I got this. I just need to walk 1 more mile. I have to walk or run 2 more miles. You see, for that badge to enter, for that point system, for that coupon, for that, name the reward, because it depends again on your platform. And then this helps also for the social dynamic. They can show that they have done their work. They can show it to the provider, to the nurse, to their guardian. Look, I have, for 2 weeks straight, I took my medication on time, and I walked reasonably well, and I ate healthy food. So you see, I'm doing progress. I have progress, and it's measured, and I experienced it, and it's validated. And this helps in the reward situation feedback. So positive feedback is highly aspired, but in positive feedback without some measurement of progress, some aspect of social dynamic, some clarity of what would be the long and short-term aims within that platform, there's no meaning to the feedback. Imagine you've done nothing in the platform, you did not walk, you did not input your medication on time. This is very simplistic features. But then the feedback comes from the automated feedback from the platform. Good job. You've survived the week. We'll give you 5 points. Doesn't make sense. I didn't do the job. I didn't do the work. I did not adhere to my medications. I did not walk as the challenge told me. And I still have an automated feedback. That becomes annoyance, actually. Try it. Go ahead and try it. Making automated feedbacks without actually having some measurable progress will frustrate the user because it gives them the feeling of guilt and also the feeling of like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? Why give me a reward without me doing the effort? Think about it that way. All right? So fundamentally, that is the base situation there. And now let's talk about the difference, very overlapping, by the way, game-based learning versus gamification, all right? So the very important question, since this is an infant stage, it's a very infant situation here, where do we draw the line for mobile health apps? I'm not going to answer that question. You know why? Because this is the question. Now we're having this mismatch between the three words. A lot of people like, are you building a game? Or are you building a game that is learning game in digital health? What do you mean by gamify? It doesn't make sense to me. Talk to me in English. You know, I've had that literally a few weeks ago. Somebody told me, talk to me in English. What do you mean by gamify? So it's very hard to say, oh my, okay. So now we have to explain it in a fundamental level. But then if it's not understood, like you got the spectrum of game, which is the gaming industry is a huge one, right? And literally they have all the game elements. And then you got something that is a gray area, okay? Game-based learning. It toggles between the two. And then you got gamification, which the mobile health world is actually opening their arms into it because of the high engagement situation, because you really want the patients to come in to that digital health platform. Okay, so now we go row by row. Games are just for fun and may or may not have defined rules and objectives. Game-based learning, on the other hand, is games have defined learning objectives. And then on the gamification may just be a collection of tasks with points of some form of reward. So here is what they're trying to tell you is, I'm going to put it in a different situation, is like you have a story, you have a story. Like for example, when you play Dota or you play War of Warcraft or some Call of Duty or something like this by Bethesda Gaming or Ubisoft, you always have a character. Think about it this way. You always have a character that you choose, and you are given a challenge, like you get the scenarios and you know the problem and you get the climax of the problem, the motivation why that character have to go and assassin or have to go and get out of the island or whatever that objective is. So the thing is, some of them are just for fun. You're just playing it for fun. But then some of them are, you have to learn how to use that pistol in order to push to go through the next level. You see, so Call of Duty, for example, is a game-based learning because you really need to master the weapon of your choice in order to move along the challenges of that first level. For the games that just for fun, for example, you can be playing Barbie in a dollhouse. It's just for fun. It may have rules and objectives or something, but it's still for fun. You can always hit on game over and you can repeat again because it's supposed to entertain you rather. So now if you notice, the games that you see, which are the billion-dollar games out there, are actually game-based learning because you have to master the commands, master the weapons, master the whatever in order to push forward. So for the gamification, it could be a collection of tasks with points or some form of reward because it's not about the game. It's not about a character that you create. It's not about the story that you have, the storyline. It's rather about you getting something that may seem serious, may seem boring, and you put an element of fun, and so that you can actually adhere to it faster. You see what I mean? So for example, if you have to adhere to your medications and you're a diabetic, then you would like to have some collection of tests like the challenge for today is to eat healthy with this type of calories. The challenge of the day is that you walk this 5 miles. The challenge of the day is that you adhere to your medications and report it on the platform, and we will give you some form of reward. You see? So it's not really like you are an assassin who happened to be a diabetic and you see? So here's the fine line between the two. Always remember, a game has a storyline. Gamification does not need to have a storyline whatsoever. It just needs to make sure that you are having fun in there with a collection of challenges, maybe with other people who are real-life gamified users, and you are collecting points, collecting rewards. It depends on what type of gamification user you are, again. So the other row is winning and losing is a part of the game. There's always that thing of game over. Imagine if you have a diabetic app and it tells you game over. Isn't that scary? Isn't that very terrifying? It's like your app tells you game over. What does that mean? Am I gonna die because I didn't adhere to the medications? What do you mean by game over? Do you mean that I have to go to the ER? You see? Imagine the scalability of that problem. So understand that there is start and there is game over, or there is next challenge. Game-based learning is losing may or may not be possible because the point is to motivate people to take some action and learn as an end result. And this is exactly what we mean by gray matter. This is where it becomes gray because it's sometimes like a gamification, sometimes like a game, and it depends on other variables. So you see, for the gamification, losing may or may not be possible because the point is to motivate people to take some action and do something. You see? So gamification here, do something. Behavioral change. Game-based learning, learn something. Make sure that you learn. All right? And for the third part is gameplay comes first, rewards are secondary. So the whole point is to have fun and be entertained in the game. And the rewards are secondary because it's not necessarily that you're gonna, grab those coins and buy it elsewhere. But you feel good having some points here and there. The whole point is to get you entertained and engaged and pass a good time. Game-based learning, on the other hand, is sometimes just playing the game is intrinsically rewarding. The reward itself is because you learned something. You see, it's really based on you gotta learn this. So for example, Duolingo is a game-based, not a game, but it's really game-based learning. I'm just gonna say it because it's like it has that aspect of the reward itself is to be able to speak that language, for example. And then being intrinsically rewarding is optional because you cannot quantify that one. But you're going to put the elements together, hopefully that you're rewarded. So here it's like gamification is to make sure that the process is fun enough, engaging enough for the person to adhere to it longer. So the fourth one is games are usually hard and expensive to build, and we all know about it. Ubisoft is a huge industry for game producer, and there's a reason. All that beautiful graphics, all those angles, all that AI within it. And game-based learning are usually hard and expensive to build as well because, for example, Call of Duty is also a very game-based learning. And then, of course, you have to make modules and make characters and etc. And gamification here is actually the cheaper choice because, again, you're taking serious, boring, mundane tasks and you are making them way more fun by implementing some game elements. The fourth one is story and scenes are part of the game. Remember what I said in the first part? This is highly connected. There is a story to it. There's the scenarios. There is you're entering different realms, different dimensions, right? And the game-based learning content is usually morphed to fit the story and scenes of the game. So it's not about the scenes and the story. It's more about the content that you're supposed to learn, and it's put into that story and scenes. And the gamification usually have game-like features, but then it's not necessarily a story and a scene. So it might have emojis, may have a virtual assistant that has content, but it's not necessarily as robust and granular and beautiful and advanced graphics like, for example, a game. All right, so remember the question, where do we draw the line for mobile health apps? And that is where this is the very reason why Gamify mobile health is at its infant stage and it's an at its emerging stage, because now everybody can, it's an open fair, it's a fair game, everybody can experiment and figure out what works best. So let's have a pragmatic view of the gamification process flow with a focus on mobile health applications. All right, so first part, you really have to assess the objectives of this project that you're dealing with. We're gonna assume that you have a project at hand that you're gonna deal with, okay? So number one is you agree on key business objectives, very important. Please don't skip some stuff here. It's really, really important, because I've seen a lot of people skip stuff and then they end up in this turmoil later on and they have to repeat themselves. It's very expensive going backward. So please take note of these. Make sure that you pass along them, at least agree with them or negotiate or discuss them among your team and your collaborators. Number one, before even talk about gamification, agree on key business objectives first. Identify those first and list all those objectives, and then prioritize those objectives, and then you have to assess if gamification is applicable. And to assess that, remember the earlier slides, just look at them and figure out if you have gamification users around. Do the focus groups, do some design thinking methodology, figure out if actually gamification is applicable in this specific problem that you're trying to solve. After assessing the objectives, then you go into gathering intelligence. So organizational development plans. You have to figure out, if you're in a bigger organization, you're not a startup, if you're part of an established organization, figure out the development plans. Is this even feasible for you guys? After that, figure out the existing metrics. And then after finding the metrics, then specifications and wireframes. And then you figure out if there are existing and planned technology platforms that you can integrate. The best thing is to have things that are existing and you pull them together, you aggregate them together, and your glue will be the gamification process, right? The game elements that you're gonna design. So after you gather intelligence, no skipping in here, go to the third. Here you have to define the target behaviors, and this is where what we talked about earlier, right? So you have to first, inwardly or internal affairs, select business objectives. Figure out what you're trying to offer here. List target user behaviors by going out there and trying to figure out what type of gamification user you got. Then you define the metrics, again, by looking at that slide where you find their inner need and how you're going to supply, provide service to that inner need. And then you repeat with each objective. Figure as granular, as selective, as precise as possible. All right? So this is a pragmatic process. I use this, I don't skip it. Every time I have a project, I keep going in the same process over and over. You might get tempted, you hear gamification is a big buzz, and you will be like, okay, I'm just gonna jump into it. So I'm gonna brute force it. No. Remember, the first part, assess the objective, and if the gamification is not applicable, you don't need to go through all the gamification. Just keep going ahead and treat it as a generic project, as a generic technology project, okay? So in the fourth part is that this is where you figure out your player type strategies, right? Remember, we are trying to figure them out. We met some of them. So here, the player type strategies define demographics of the player. Figure out the majority user base. Who are they? Where do they live? How old are they? What price range? No, yeah, also price and how much they can afford, and also their user age ranges. Because if you're dealing with Generation Z, the design is going to be different. If you're dealing with 65 and up, it's different, right? All these things that I'm telling you, the phenotypes that will tell you what type of demographics you're dealing with, should be used. I'm telling you, it's a combination between design thinking and UX design. Once you get these two, then you look at your gamification user types that we have earlier and figure out, match them. You go like, okay, so I think my majority are gonna be socializers. We're dealing with socializers. How are we going to like provide service to these people who are gamers, socializers? Okay, so Once you have the demographics in place, then you figure out what are the user motivations. And I think I already gave you on those 2 slides the type of inner motivations that you have. You take all those relativity, competition, and all that stuff, you put them in one side, and then you take the gamification with the inner need and motivation, and then you match them with what you have figured out in the outside focus groups that you actually met. And that is where you start to match people together. So you figure out what is their user motivation in what category. Always go back to the earlier slides for you to actually do this part. After you do that, then you start to figure out the best type of game mechanics for the majority of your user type, for the majority of the gamers you have. So if you remember from the segmentation, we got some long number of a long list of game elements, right? And then for every gamification user from the earlier slide, you have some types of game mechanics that you can use. These ones are the most popular. What we mean by most popular, now you know which one belongs to what. So you got badges, very popular, you've seen it, you've been part of it for sure. You got levels, leaderboards, progress bar, virtual currency, awards, trading, gifting, challenges between users. And if you look at the earlier slides, you will remember that some of them work best with farmers and some of them work best with self-seekers. Know the fine line. Remember, achievement on a social achievement and competition are what? Self-seekers. And collection and precision specific track record is for farmers, okay? So you have to look at these and then you decide with your team what works best for the majority of the people that you have identified because of their demographics and their behavior in terms of dealing with their own challenges. So let's take 1 minute water coffee break and we'll be back. Hi guys, welcome back. Do you guys have any questions you want to clarify? Feel free to write in the chat box. All right, let's move on. So this is very pragmatic, you know, take it step by step, no rush, no jumping. And I believe this is a formula for a more successful project, okay? So next, 5. This is where you design a prototype. There's a lot of problem, especially when the leader of the team is actually, how can I say, is an engineer or developer. Oh, they want to jump. They want to jump directly to the prototype because it's hot. Like, oh my God, I'm going to gamify digital health platform. It's so fun. It's so hot. It's so, like, let's prototype right now. No, don't do that. Please don't fall into that trap. From a pragmatic point of view, from a realistic point of view, I've seen a lot of death values in there. Don't jump into designing a prototype until you've done your due diligence from 1 to 5, okay? But if you've done that well and you're all good, then you're ready for designing a prototype. And here you have to look at the theme. Find your theme. So the theme part, you have to work with the UX and UI person because you have to figure out how you're going to do it. Is it going to be too cute? Is it for children? Are you going to make it too cute? There are emojis, there are maybe favicons, there are icons, or is it going to be a bit serious? Is it catering to professionals, so you want it to have a little bit of seriosity? This is a very creative mode, you guys. So no formula to this. I'm just giving you something top of my head. Defining the team will always rely on what type of gamification user you're dealing with, what type of demographics you're dealing with. Are they English speaking, non-English speaking? What's their age range? Are they kids? Are they old people? Are they millennial, Generation Z, 35 and plus? Stuff like mothers. Are they parents? Okay. And the theme will be coherent, will be relevant to that segmentation of the people that you're dealing with. And then you build a prototype. This is where the development happens. And then you play test it. You play test it with the people that you have as a focus group. And then you create a specification document so that you can always go back and reiterate. And the designer prototype, this is where Agile comes in. This is where design thinking helps you also push it forward. And lean startupping will push it forward. So you don't need to do this on your own. As a gamification person, you have to design the theme with the person. You have to design the theme. You have to provide that mechanism of what type of gaming element should be implemented at where and when. Okay, that's what you have to do. That's your due diligence with the UX UI designer and also with a design thinker. After you've done that, you get the MVP. I hope you know it, minimum viable product. Then you go into number 6, production. Choose your team, project management, testing and play testing, and roll it out. This is out of scope for today, but it's very important for you because you're going to be part of this. You're going to be part of this team. You are a gamification expert, you're a gamification specialist in your company. You are part of that team, and there's justification for why those specifications have been created, and this is why there's a specification document that you'll be working with developers and designers all together. Okay? After it is rolled out for testing and for experimenting, then number 7 is you follow up. This is where the planning happens. Watch out for disruptors, assess effectiveness overall, and for each game mechanic. This is very important. This is your work. You really have to figure out the effectiveness, the overall effectiveness, and also specifically to every game mechanic. Because as you remember, every gamification user actually has a collection of game mechanics that you can use for them, right? So here, if you chose, because maybe for some reason you chose that specific game mechanic, for example, leaderboard, but then you realize when you actually roll it out, the leaderboard did not really work out with your self-seekers, then you really have to go back and figure out maybe you should put another game mechanic, okay? And here you develop features for improvement. This is where you work with other people, but then there's always a strong reasoning as to what. And the key metrics, remember the key metrics have to be put together way before designing a prototype. And then of course you have to plan a regular fresh content. And here you have to, innovate and keep innovating new stuff, maybe a merge between 2 game mechanics. Maybe you will create your own game mechanic. You never know, right? But the thing is, you go step by step and make sure that you always do not jump into it. And the key metrics are very important because when you roll a digital health or any platform in this matter, if you roll it and you want to assess, if you don't have key metrics, how are you going to assess? And if you do not know if that game mechanic is working, then how are you going to figure out if actually it's adhering and it's engaging and it's actually pushing and influencing for a positive behavioral change, right? So I hope this gave you a step-by-step on how to actually start a project with the gamification aspect in place. Remember, the content of it from a core value is that you have to really identify your gamification user first. It's really people-oriented. Figure out who the people you're dealing with, the majority, and then from there you have guidelines on what you got. Number 1, intrinsic motivation. What do they need? So there's the void that you have to cater to, the game mechanics that are actually coherent to that type of user, and then you look at successful examples out there. They may not be in the digital health spectrum. You might not find it. So that's why you need to get creative enough to venture for your gamification users in other industries, because they'll let you know how it's reacting to them. All right. So 10 best practices for implementing gamifications. Please take note of this. Number 1, play test the gamification experience. You and other people that you believe are your sample gamification users. Number 2, seriously consider alternatives. If this is not going to apply, please do not brute force it. Please. There are a lot of people who want to have the word gamification just because it's a very buzzy word lately. But if it's not really needed, just skip it altogether and move along the motions, because the whole point is you want to have a human-centered platform in digital health that is actually providing value for your patients or for your health consumers. Now, please remember that. Number 3, create a tie to business needs. This is why, again, I said, please don't jump to number 5. Make sure that the business needs and the user needs are aligned in one way or another. Work with design thinkers. Work with the boardroom. Make sure that these two are matched together. Number 4, create a context. Because you're not going to make a story in the platform, make a context in the platform. Maybe there's some theme, there is some meaning to it, okay? Why should I download you? Make it engaging enough. Maybe if it's community oriented, then highlight that. It's a community oriented, it's a judgment-free place. It's the sky's the limit. And the story here could be outside. So I'm not talking about storyline where you have characters, but the story could be the way you're going to market this gamified platform, because it has some context to it. Number 5, use scenes to advance learning. Here, when we say scene, not the way we talked about game-based learning, but here the scene is the screen view. First, I'm having a challenge. Second, I am doing the challenge. I'm implementing the challenge. Third, I did the challenge, therefore I have the reward. So that these are scenarios, okay? And this will help me adhere and learn and engage and retain my interest in your platform. Number 6, make scoring and winning transparent. Don't make it like a black box. Out of the blue, you have 500 points. There's no point of that. Let me know that my hard work has been justified, has been validated. Number 7, keep the rules simple. Don't overcomplicate it. These are people who have chronic diseases. These are people who are busy in their lives trying to get healthier in a very hectic lifestyle. So keep it simple. Implement the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. You see what I mean? So have that KISS principle in place. So it was easy to understand, easy to enter it's a easier way to enter your platform. I'm having fun. I'm not, thinking too much, but hey, I have scoring and I have winning. So I'm feeling great. There's some reward mechanism out of it, right? Number 8, keep Letterbox small. Do not make it overcomplicated, like with 5,000 users. And no, make it simple, make it small, and make it meaningful. Is it actually providing value to my self-seeker users? Yes or no? Number 9, use levels and badge appropriately. Do not over badge it. Do not complicate your levels. Make it simple. The badges should have meaning to it. So maybe you should have a process. You have to talk to your maybe domain experts actually, when to give a badge to a certain health consumer. Is it when they lose 5 pounds or when they lose 10 pounds? And what is the effect of that? What is the effect of actually giving a badge every 5 pounds? Is it the frequency, or will it lose that reward because of the challenge, of the effort? Or 10 pounds is too much? Like maybe I won't be able to lose 10 pounds. Maybe I'm stuck with 7, which means I'll be frustrated because I will not be pushed to the next level. These questions you need to pull in your domain experts, okay? Number 10 is identify success criteria, key metrics inside and outside. Success criteria for the gamification users, they are the one who are going to tell you. You have to sit down with them and they're going to tell you when they will feel that they are successful. And that is investigation. The internal success criteria, on the other hand, is the KPIs. Are the people engaged with our platform, or do they opt out? And how often do they opt out? And God knows that's a scary question to answer, right? So please keep these 10 best practices for you when you are implementing it, and have these together with the step-by-step, because some aspects here you have to work on it way before building the platform. All right, so thank you for your attention. I hope this core masterclass gave you a jump start into this realm of gamification. I believe, given that I am active implementer in the gamification world of digital health, I believe there will be a surge, there will be a wave of everything being gamified in digital health, starting with diabetics, fitness, wellness, losing weight. a lot of them are coming out from that aspect because it's easier to test and fail and come back again. If you have specific questions, feel free to email me, kat@medverselab.com. I'm so happy to have you here, and you're gonna receive your slide deck, your materials, and your URL. And if you want the podcast too, I'm gonna put it out there too. Thank you so much for being here. Bye. Take care of yourselves.